All right, welcome back to the Christian Constitutional Conservative. And I tried looking through CNN, see if they had anything, and they just had news that I've already covered before. So there wasn't anything new. I don't know if it's because it's Friday or what's going on, but anyway, I am here with The Hill, which I've watched sometimes, and I don't see Robbie or I forget her name, Bree. So, well, in the videos below, maybe they're in this one, but maybe they took the day off today. So we'll go ahead and watch this. Biden bribe document alleges Burisma chief coerced to pay Joe Hunter during VP years. So let's go ahead and watch this.
Welcome to Rising. It's good to be back with you, Jessica, and it looks like we're just a couple of Barbie girls today.
We are. As far as the Barbenheimer thing goes, it looks like we're Team Barbie, which I think fits.
Yeah, that tracks for me too.
Yeah, women are going to go for Barbie and men are going to go for Oppenheimer.
I haven't seen either of the movies yet, but I'm going to try to this weekend. So what's up first for us, Jess?
So on Thursday, Republicans released a copy of an unverified tip to the FBI alleging a scheme to bribe President Biden. A tip that has not been corroborated, according to The Hill. Senator Chuck Grassley released the information, which is memorialized in an FD 1023 form, documenting interactions with a confidential informant, and alleges that then President Joe Biden was involved in a $5 million bribery scheme with a Burisma executive. Hunter Biden at that time was on the board of the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, which was the subject of an investigation under the prosecutor's office.
Democrats have also released information collected during the first impeachment effort that included a conversation that allegedly contradicts the information relayed in the recently released FD 1023 form. The White House has denied any wrongdoing stemming from the matter. Ian Sams, White House spokesperson for oversight and investigations, said in a statement, quote, "It is remarkable that congressional Republicans, in their eagerness to go after President Biden regardless of the truth, continue to push claims that have been debunked for years and that they themselves have cautioned to take with a grain of salt because they could be made up."
The FBI also rebuked Grassley and company for sharing the letter, saying, quote, "We have repeatedly explained to Congress in correspondence and in briefings how critical it is to keep this source information confidential." So that makes sense to me. I mean, is this public information? Should we make the information in this FD 1023 public before it's investigated? I think the FBI had their chance to investigate it years ago. And now this committee, headed by Grassley and others, is trying to look into, see if there's any evidence to corroborate what's been alleged in this document. And releasing the document, I think, is a part of their campaign, just kind of against the Biden family. I want to see some evidence that what's alleged in the document is true.
Yeah, I get the sense that this is something of a pressure campaign and an attempt to get the FBI to take their investigation more seriously. Because when the FBI did have this document years ago, when they heard from this whistleblower that there was potentially a bribery payment made to the Bidens on behalf of this official at Burisma, which was being investigated for corruption at the time, the FBI basically dismissed the document and didn't investigate it properly. So now Republicans are trying to pick up where the FBI left off. And unfortunately, the FBI has not been forthcoming with regard to this document at all. I mean, now they're saying they don't want it made public. They initially denied that it even existed. And then when Chuck Grassley said that he had already been made aware of its existence, the FBI basically gave in and said, okay, well, we have it, but we can't give it to you. And the Republicans had to threaten to hold Christopher Wray in contempt of Congress before they were able to actually get their hands on the document. So I don't necessarily fault Grassley for making this public, considering how much the FBI has stonewalled the entire Republican investigation, and everyone around them has denied the veracity of the claims of the whistleblowers that they've brought in from the IRS who were looking into Hunter Biden's tax crimes. And I think that they've just had enough. They finally reached a breaking point where they said, okay, if you're going to not comply with our investigations and our subpoenas, if you're going to try to hide documents from us, we'll just release them directly to the public and see what they have to say. And we'll continue to try to, corroborate the document in the meantime.
And this is the problem. This is why Republicans don't trust the FBI. All right? They'll quickly do stuff in order to go after Trump. Quickly. Even if it's not legal, like when they were looking for the FISA court, the FISA warrant. And they did it in an illegal way. But then when it comes to Joe Biden, they'll slow walk it. They'll take their time. First, they'll deny it. Then they'll say, oh, yeah, we have it. And then they'll say, oh, we'll get it to you eventually. And then finally, when you make it public, then they want to say, oh, why are you making it public? Well, you should have made it public 4 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever it was. And then they wonder, well, why don't they trust us?
Right. I think what we're seeing here as this story develops is basically not something that's particularly surprising when you consider who's at the head of the foreign policy establishment in the United States and their ties to multinational corporations. I think what makes this especially interesting is that when Biden was vice president, he did argue that Viktor Shokin was someone who is corrupt as a prosecutor, and Burisma was facing prosecution at the time. Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma when this went down. And what's in the document is this, testimony or this allegation that Burisma's CEO and founder, Mykola Zlochevsky, has said that having Hunter Biden on the board might actually help them fight the prosecution that they were facing. And so that whole situation, I think, is really what makes this such a big story, that potentially President Biden used his influence, or at the time, Vice President, used his influence to manipulate what was going on with the business dealings of his son at this multinational corporation when he was vice president. Now he's president, and for them to be investigating this does feel political. Is it still worth investigating? Yes. And so if they're facing roadblocks in terms of trying to find evidence to corroborate what's been alleged in this 1023, I think it makes sense to say, all right, we're just going to release this to the public so that now there's more public pressure on you all to allow us to even look for evidence. Because if that's the real roadblock, that makes sense. I have a feeling they've been looking and haven't been able to find anything. I don't think it's a lack of resources. I think it's a lack of evidence. And now they're frustrated. That's what it feels to me. But we do know that the folks that were close to the matter when they were talking about the $5 million that was exchanged, they did say that the money's buried, that you're not going to be able to trace it. So it could just be untraceable, and that could be a source of their frustration. And the guilt could still be there, even if the evidence is not.
Yeah, I think maybe, regarding the idea of that.
They get Donald Trump for obstructing justice. There's got to be a way where you can go after the FBI for obstructing justice. There's got to be. Somebody's got to find a way to go after the FBI for obstructing justice, like here.
Them putting this through shell companies and various wire transfers and in foreign bank accounts doesn't necessarily mean that it's untraceable, but maybe it will take some time to get there, and the Republicans don't have time on their side necessarily. But this whistleblower testimony, there's actually two whistleblowers now, I think kind of shed some insight into why the FBI has been stonewalling, because these IRS whistleblowers said, both of them, that they received a lot of pushback from higher levels within the Department of Justice as they were investigating Hunter Biden's finances, and they suspect it was because they knew if they continued to tug on these threads that they would eventually get to this bribery payment or other things actually implicating President Joe Biden, and they were told explicitly that they were to avoid going down the road that would lead to Joe Biden. Now, the U.S. Attorney out of Delaware, David Weiss, has changed his story several times throughout this investigatory process. He initially claimed that he had all of the power in the world to bring charges in any state that he wanted, because everybody on the case agreed that Hunter Biden should have received a more aggressive set of charges than were actually brought. He basically got a sweetheart deal in the end of this. And then when the whistleblower Gary Shapley came out and said, actually, David Weiss told a room full of agents that he did not have the power to bring the charges in different states and that the DOJ was actually blocking him from doing so, that was when David Weiss changed his story the first time and said, well, actually, I was told by the DOJ that I had the power, but I never actually asked for it. And I think there's an obvious disconnect there. Was David Weiss told that he had the power to bring charges in different states but never asked for it? Because that would be really strange, considering, again, every investigator on this case agreed that the charges should have been harsher. Or is David Weiss changing his story to try to toe the line between what is acceptable to the DOJ's narrative and what is consistent with the evidence presented by the IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley? And was it actually the case that David Weiss was discouraged from asking for the special status in order to bring charges in other states because the DOJ told him not to?
Yeah, I think it goes without question that the FBI and DOJ failed to investigate this when they had the opportunity to do so. They've held on to this document for quite some time now. And now it's in the hands of Congress, and it's up to Congress and Grassley, honestly, to investigate this, to figure out if this document that has become the center of the news cycle week after week after week, because they keep alleging Chuck Grassley that there's something to back up these claims. He's hinted at that, but hasn't said anything absolute. And it seems to me that there is no evidence. So the FBI is saying, well, this could still be entirely made up. True. But now it's in the hands of Congress to investigate. And if they have a lack of resources and they're being prevented from investigating it, they should say that. It's obvious to me that the DOJ and FBI has failed up until now. But now that it's in the hands of Congress, we need Chuck Grassley to show any evidence, if he hasn't, not release the document of the allegations. That doesn't do anything to really further the story or to help us weed out corruption or make legislation to prevent things like this from happening in the future. That's the duty of Congress. That's why, we should have the Oversight Committee investigating things like this. But what's going on now is, it seems to me, that they're drumming up more drama. And what we really need is evidence that either this is true or it is not true. And if they want to say, it's not like a Clarence Thomas situation where we can just look at his legal aid's Venmo transactions and actually the financial paper trail is a bit more complicated, fine. Say we need more time to investigate this. Say we need more resources to investigate this. But I don't think reporting on allegations as Chuck Grassley is his duty as a member of Congress right now. And so I'd just like to see more from that committee.
Yeah, I want to see more too. I think that they have evidence, but they're not able to release it yet because the allegation against the Republicans and Grassley in particular when he released this document was that he was basically blowing confidential sources. But I actually think to this point, Republicans have been very careful not to make a lot of information public because they are concerned about keeping things confidential. If we are talking about the bank accounts and the wire transfers and all of this financial web that James Comer was talking about a month or two ago, he didn't put up a poster like in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and show the names of the bank accounts and the routing numbers and all of that, right? He basically was speaking in general terms about the situation because they probably do want to get all of their ducks in the row before they actually release everything. But they do clearly want to provide updates at the same time to the American people so they know that there is progress being made in the investigation. Meanwhile, throughout this, House Republicans shared a flashback from 2018 of Joe Biden. Let's watch.
I'll give you one concrete example. I was not but it just happened to be that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones, so I got Ukraine, and I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. and I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
Quid pro
So
quo.
that's sort of the bombshell clip that has been shared quite a few times in the past couple of years. And the allegation there, of course, is that Biden is bragging about getting rid of Shokin in exchange for giving money to Ukraine, which is exactly the sort of thing that Trump was asking Ukraine to look into when he was impeached. Now, the argument, as you mentioned earlier, Jessica, is that Shokin was corrupt and that he wasn't doing his job, which is why he was removed from his post. But I think there's two problems with that argument that members of the Democratic Party are making. One is it acceptable at all to tell people to fire tell other countries rather to fire certain people in government in exchange for $1 billion of American taxpayer money? And two, why is it that Shokin, who was supposedly not doing his job and so corrupt, had one company that he was looking into, and that was Burisma, and conveniently that was also the company that Hunter Biden was sitting on the board of? It seemed like there's a conflict of interest no matter how you spin it.
Yep, that's
right.
correct.
And you have Zlochevsky, who is a close friend of Rudy Giuliani, who during the first impeachment attempt of Joe Biden said that the president or any other member of the Biden family, the vice president, or people working for the vice president at the time of Hunter Biden's engagement with Burisma, there was no dealings with Burisma and the vice president's office, according to Zlochevsky himself. And so this contradicts what's being reported in this FD 1023 document. We don't know who's making these allegations. They're just referred to anonymously as CHS in the document. And so the FBI is saying that there's some special information that's too sensitive to make public in this document. I'm not really buying it. We're all familiar with the allegations. I think releasing it with, the whistleblower as an anonymous source is totally fine. And the FBI is kind of out of line by saying that at this point after seemingly failing to investigate. But I think what we're seeing in this document is information that's inconsistent with what came out during the Biden's first impeachment attempt. And so that points to the fact that there could be allegations in this document that are made up. There could be parts of this document where the allegations are true. And until we have evidence in either direction, it's going to be really hard for this committee to say anything absolute or concrete. But to be reporting on these allegations, I think, is still important for us to do. But I'd really like to see Senator Grassley and Comer, frankly, instead of running this like a media campaign, to actually do their job and investigate. And if they're facing roadblocks with the investigation, say that. But releasing this document, it's not really new information for a lot of us that have been following this story. And so at the heart of this, your duty as a member of Congress is to pass legislation to prevent things like this from happening, which we also haven't seen them propose any legislation to prevent members of the foreign policy establishment to have family members on the board of multinational corporations or anything of the sort. We really need something, some kind of legislation to prevent this from happening in the future, not just drama stirred up in the media. That's not your duty as a member of Congress. So I'd like to see this start to go in that direction.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to continue to investigate. And meanwhile, the DOJ could have prevented all of this if they had appointed a special counsel to investigate, acknowledging their conflict of interest with Merrick Garland being appointed by President Joe Biden. And they didn't do that. And that obviously raises a red flag as well. We'll be back with more Rising after this.
Yeah, the DOJ, including the FBI, they're kind of shaky right now, only going after certain political opponents. It reminds you of the brown shirts, the black shirts, whatever they had in Russia, whatever they have in Cuba, kind of what it reminds you of. I don't know about this young lady. She's pretty, but her voice would break up. Or maybe it was just me. I don't know. But it sounded like her voice would break out. She sounded a little nervous. But anyway, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment. If you want me to watch another video and comment on it, let me know down in the comment section. And I will do you that favor. If you subscribe. You have to subscribe. All right, we'll see ya. Adios.